Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel Biodiversity and Conservation. I am Subhalakshmi Rao from Ambika Prasad Research Foundation, India, and today we are going to discuss about some types of sample designs. So when we do research, we have to design how we have to take sample from a big population called universe. So there are some ways in which we can think about what type of design we can do about sample collection. Like, for example, sampling types are of mainly two types, non-probability sampling and probability sampling. So, the probability sampling is based on the concept of random selection, whereas non-probability sampling is non-random or purposive or on the basis of convenience we can do this type of sampling. So when we talk about non-probability sampling, they are more relaxed, and in case of probability sampling, we have to consider all the elements in a sample. So let's start one by one. We will discuss about these sampling techniques. So first one is non-probability sampling. In this case, actually, it's a sampling procedure where we have to estimate the probability that each item in the population has of being selected in the sample, and the items for the sample are actually selected deliberately, means we have a purpose of selecting this type of sample from a population. And under non-probability sampling, the organizers or the researchers of the inquiry, they choose the particular units uh, of universe in a sample on the basis of the small mass, so that they can select out uh, which they prefer. Like for example, when we have to study about the economic conditions of people living in villages and towns. So we will purposefully select um, those particular areas which are influenced by towns, or we will choose some villages, not the entire state. So here we take this non-probability sampling type design, and here actually always personal bias is included. So there is no assurance that we will get a accurate result. There may be sampling error in this case, and which will hamper the design. So now another type of sampling method is probability sampling method, and here we randomly choose any item from the universe that have equal chance of picking in the sample, and there is no bias in this case, and it's purely a lottery method where we have to select an individual without knowing what the background is, what it is required for, or any advantage or disadvantage to that item. And so it has 50-50 chance of getting picked. And in this sampling method, as we're using non-bias technique, so there is very less error, and if there is error we can directly measure those error, which will which is helpful in this case because uh, errorless sampling is most required in designing and research process. And for this main purpose only, this probability sampling method is most preferable than the other sampling techniques. And this random sampling from a finite population refers to that method of sample selection which gives us the each possible sample combination with the equal probability of getting picked, and this gives us a way in which we can pick any element from the sample with equal probability of getting into the sample. And how can we select a random sample then? It's actually a question where um, we have to select the sample randomly with actual practice. Like we can use the lottery method where we um, name all the items in paper and throw it and mix it, then we can take out the slip. So these are some of the methods where we can select any sample. Now, some of the sampling designs um, which are mainly probability sampling methods. So here, first one is systematic sampling. So in this case, it is actually a most practical way of sampling in which we select every item that is present in the universe or in a population, and this type of sampling, that's why called systematic sampling, because we we give all the credit to the random selection, and there is very less bias or error in this case. And it is actually not a random sample collection technique, but it has very strict sense to it, and it has certain plus points, like it can be taken as an improvement over a simple random sample, and it is easier and less costlier method of sampling, and can be conveniently used by by the by us researchers to carry out our research for a large population. And there are also some disadvantages to this type of sampling, like if there is a case of periodicity in the population, then we cannot prove that data through systematic sampling, because we will not get the correct data only. Next is stratified sampling. So if a population from which we have drawn the sample does not constitute a homogeneous population, so then the stratified sampling technique is used. Like there are different groups of rabbits present in a rabbit population, like white rabbit or black rabbit or gray rabbit, then we have to segregate them separately on the basis of their color. Then we can apply our data which we require from them, and that is one type of example where we can say that the population was divided into different strata. Strata means layer, as each strata is more homogeneous than the large population of heterogeneous group. So this actually gives us detailed and reliable information. Next is cluster sampling. So if the total area of interest happens to be a big one, then we can divide the big population into small groups, that is called clusters, and that type of study is called cluster sampling. And in cluster sampling, the total population, um, as it is divided into smaller units, it becomes very easier to study all the clusters and randomly, and get all the data that will be good for the whole population. So this reduces the cost by concentrating surveys in selected clusters, and there is also not much information in um, all the total number of observations that we will take within a cluster, and it is only used because of the economic advantage, because it is very less money consuming process. And next is area sampling. So if the clusters that happen to be some geographical subdivisions, then this cluster sampling is called area sampling. So the cluster designs where the primary sampling unit represents a cluster of units based on geographic area are distinguished as area sampling. So all the rules that are applicable to the cluster sampling is also applicable for area sampling. Next is multi-stage sampling. So in this case, it is a further extension of the principles of cluster sampling. So if we have a very large geographical area, then this type of sampling technique can be used. Like we have to do a census of a country, or census of all the banks within a selected district. So this type of technique can be used here. And the first stage of this multi-stage sampling is mainly to select the large primary sampling unit. Then we can go to uh, like if we are going to study about the census of a country, then we have to select some states. Then after that we will go for selection of districts. So in that way the multi-stage sampling happens. Then the sampling with the probability proportional to size. So in case the cluster sampling units do not have the same number of elements, then it is considered appropriate to use a random selection process where the probability of each cluster being included in the sample is proportional to the size of the cluster. So for that, we have to list the number of elements that are present inside each cluster. Then we will sample systematically the appropriate number of elements present in the group. Then the results of this sampling technique will be equivalent to the simple random sample method, and it is also less expensive, so it can be used in various ways. Next is sequential sampling. Here the size of the sample under this technique is not fixed in advance, but is determined according to the decisions taken on the basis of the information we have gathered during the survey process. Then it, in case where we take a sample, study it then reject or accept it on the basis of studying a single sample is called single sampling. Then when we study the same sample again, then it will be called double sampling. Then after that, we if we study the same sample more than two times, then it will be called multiple sampling. So when the number of samples is more than two and it is neither certain from before what type of data we are going to collect from each sampling process, then this is called sequential sampling, where uh, we go on taking samples one after another as long as we prefer to get our result. So this is all from me today. Thank you.